Welcome to Forthright. I'm Sue Lonnie Madsen, and this week's column and commentary focuses on one of the truly small d democratic processes in our state constitution, the initiative to the legislature. As published on Thursday, November 30th, 2023, in the Spokesman Review, Republicans taking the initiative. Washington state politics have been dominated by Democrats for 30 years. The initiative process is a necessary counterbalance to one-party rule. It's also a useful get-out-the-vote tool, one that Democrats have used for years. In 2024, Republicans will be wielding the power of the initiative. Supporters of Initiative 2117 to repeal the carbon scheme driving up gas prices have submitted over 420,000 signatures, providing a nice cushion above the 324,516 required. The other 5 initiatives to the legislature are on track to meet the December 29 deadline, said Jim Walsh, chairman of the Washington State Republicans. Parental notification about minor children's health care and a public safety-driven approach to police pursuits have been especially well received, Walsh said. The other 3 initiatives would amend the long-term care tax, repeal the capital gains tax, and make it clear for the 11th time that Washington voters do not want an income tax. Signature gathering is proceeding briskly despite a hotline asking people to report the location of petition circulators. The usual modus operandi is to send paid signature disruptors to make it unpleasant enough for customers that retail businesses ask signature gatherers to leave. The snitch line asks callers to leave as much detail as possible, including the location, time of day, a description of the circulator, and any other relevant details. There's no confirmation as to who is behind the hotline, and there was no response to repeated attempts to contact Shasti Conrad, chairman of the Washington State Democrats, to find out about the hotline. Democrats are probably not planning to send thank you notes to citizens for exercising their democratic right to petition their government, or to congratulate businesses for allowing petitioners to gather on their property. Attempts to set up the signature disruption is coming a little late, with signature gathering momentum holding into the home stretch, according to organizers from Let's Go Washington. Quote, Democrats in Washington have been using the initiative process for decades to motivate and activate their base voters to get out their vote, and for too long, moderates and conservatives have sat back and watched that happen, Walsh said. That's the reason the majority party is so twisted out of shape about this. They failed to recognize that if they acted in a dismissive way, then the minority was going to find a way to clean up the mess in Olympia, unquote. The first power reserved to the people is the initiative. That's not the words of some fringe element of either party. It's the first line of Article 2, Section 1A of the Washington State Constitution. The power of the initiative provides a voice for the people in a state dominated by a single party controlling the issues and bills to be considered and signed. Initiatives to the legislature have the force of law when adopted, and the governor has no power to veto. If the legislature does not adopt the issue then goes to a vote of the people. And that's where the get-out-the-vote effect happens. One side comes up with an issue people care about, voters pay attention, and voter turnout goes up for their side. It could be enough to shift election results in tight races. The city of Spokane may have seen that effect on the makeup of the city council in 2009 and 2011 when Envision Spokane put an emotionally charged Community Bill of Rights on the ballot. It was later found to be outside the scope of local initiative power on 4 counts by the Washington Supreme Court. Were the initiatives poorly written in ignorance of the rules, or cleverly written for political gain? Either way, the concurrent elections saw centrist voices pushed off the council in favor of more extreme candidates. The city of Spokane has now adopted a constitutionally recognized pre-filing review for local initiatives. Statewide initiatives are explicitly not subject to review prior to signature gathering or being placed on the ballot, according to the court ruling. The organizers behind 2023's 6 initiatives to the legislature, now gathering signatures, have been working for more than a year to get it right. Quote, we needed to address the imbalance in policy coming out of Olympia by using the initiative process and activating our voters too, end quote, Walsh said. Putting the initiatives in front of the legislature requires legislators facing an election in 2024 to go on the record on issues voters care about. If the Democrat-controlled legislature punts it to the voters to decide in November 2024, they risk driving turnout higher among conservative as well as typically centrist Washington voters who identify as fiscally conservative and socially liberal. The last thing Democrats want is a strong Republican turnout in a year when the leading Republican candidate is polling ahead of the leading Democratic candidate for governor. And the games have begun. So this column had so many inviting side trails to follow. Paid signature gatherers are nothing new. Both sides of the political divide have used them regularly for years. They can either be paid by the hour or paid by the number of valid signatures turned in. This year is something new with the sources who are saying that these are paid signature disruptors and that they've been spotted in the Seattle area. There were still signature gatherers working on December 1st in River Park Square next to Santa Claus on the first floor, and then they weren't being harassed when I dropped by to participate in Christmas Tree Elegance on the second floor. And this might be more of a West Side issue than in the Spokane area, but it does bring up the other side trail of how do we protect signature gatherers from signature disruptors. When we used to have physical polling places to vote, we had rules about electioneering intended to prevent anyone putting undue influence on voters or discouraging them from voting altogether. And electioneering would be anything like handing out flyers, handing out any kind of literature, just any kind of advocacy kind of activity. Those rules still exist in statute because we do still have at least one in-person polling place in every county to accommodate those who cannot fill out a standard mail-in ballot because of physical disability. For example, those who are blind and want to vote without anyone knowing how they voted can use a machine that will read the ballot and accept their vote privately. RCW 29A 84-510 currently prohibits the following activities, whether carried out either in person or with electronic amplification, according to the statute, within 100 feet from the entrance to a voting center or a student engagement hub, or 25 feet from a ballot drop box. And here's the right from the statute. 1. Suggest or persuade or attempt to suggest or persuade any voter to vote for or against any candidate or ballot measure. 2. Circulate cards or handbills of any kind. 3. Solicit signatures to any kind of petition. Or 4. Engage in any practice which interferes with the freedom of voters to exercise their franchise or disrupts the administration of the voting center. Well, first I had to look up what a student engagement hub meant, and I didn't realize, but every public university is now required to have one, defined as a place that, quote, must allow students to download their exact ballot from an online portal, end quote. So it's really to make it easier for a student who might be away from home to be able to get their ballot back home if somehow the ballot did not follow them through the mail to their university. And all of those things that are supposed to be keeping you from, basically, you can't be interrupting with people's ability to cast a vote. And when an initiative to the legislature is really a vote for a piece of legislation to become law without having to be signed by the governor. So it's a pretty important place. So if paid signature interruption is going to become the new strategy, then the legislature might need to add initiative petition signature gatherers to the list of places where voters must be assured of the ability to arrive and depart unimpeded, as RCW 29A 4160 requires. Thank you for joining this edition of Forthright, and do consider reading these and future initiatives to exercise your right to participate directly in the democratic process. There will be a short description on the front, but the entire initiative will be printed on the back of each sheet, and you can read it for yourself. Subscribe at Substack with or without a pledge for notification of new content, and as always, you'll find additional reference links to the RCWs and other things quoted above posted there, so you can check things out for yourself.